How's it going? I've got a different type of video today. There's a content creator I'm sure you're all aware of, Moist Critical Charlie. He recently put out a video about One Piece. I was not aware that he was watching this series, but apparently we're gonna react to his video and talk about it.
We're coming up on a very special 5-year anniversary for a personal journey of mine. First, I need to ask though, what have you done for 5 years straight? Mewing? What about jelking? You a big jelker? Well, what if I told you that 5 years could have been better spent doing what I was doing? Watching One Piece from start to current.
I gotta agree with him on that. There is no better use of 5 years, dude. You could spend that entire 5 years building a business from scratch, making billions, making quadrillions of dollars. There is still no better use of time than watching One Piece from start to finish, in its entirety, fucking filler and everything, all of it, start to finish, everything. There is no better use of time.
I had tried numerous times to get into it and just never fell in love with it. And I gotta tell you, sports fans, the first year or so of that journey, for the first 200 to 300 episodes, were brutal. Trying to stay awake watching those arcs was a more difficult boss battle than trying to kick a heroin addiction. It was tough.
I kind of see why he says that. When I finally started watching One Piece, I was invested after the first 4 or 5 episodes. I was in. But I can understand why somebody who is already opposed to watching it, they already think it's boring. You know, so they're watching it out of spite. He says he's watching it out of spite. It doesn't surprise me that those setup arcs, that's kind of what I see them as. There are a lot of anime that aren't even that long. I think My Hero Academia is not even 200 episodes in total. To say that 200 to 300 episodes is setup is kind of insane to say, but it kind of is. One Piece, early One Piece especially, it's like a video game. It's like the first levels of a video game. When that Luffy goes to, he's meeting a new member of the crew. We get their backstory, and it's like that. It's the same formula for the first couple of arcs. Once all that setup is done, about 300 episodes in, which is what he's about to get into, the focus of the series shifts from that setup of building the crew to what the crew is going to do.
About 300 episodes, I did fall in love with One Piece. Experts may call it Stockholm Syndrome. I call it just objective improvements in the show itself. The pacing for the earlier arcs is just significantly better in the manga as opposed to the anime, and I imagine they're probably right, but I'd committed to watching the show.
Which, and I respect the hell out of him for that, for committing to watch the show, because that's what I did too. I see why, because early One Piece, there's a lot of slow, the reaction panels, the action sequences are a little cheesy, and just everything seems to kind of drag. You have to when you're watching the anime, you have to take yourself back to the time when it was being animated, when these episodes were coming out. It's just a different time. People had longer attention spans back then.
And I think once we start getting into Water 7 territory, the show really hits its stride, and it maintains that. So I'm extremely happy I did push through and catch up with the show, because it is extraordinary. I think the show offers some extremely high highs, but with that comes some lows as well.
I am so happy that he loves One Piece.
I'm gonna come. Oh.
And I would actually be willing to bet money on this. Anybody who doesn't like One Piece has not seen enough of it.
You serious?
And if they do commit the way that Charlie did to watching all of One Piece, they will end up a fucking mega fan of it. They will end up liking it. The other voice on this channel, that you may have heard him before, he has not seen One Piece and swears that he'll never watch it, and maybe he won't if he doesn't like the art style or the setting, which to each their own. There are some people out there that might watch it, all of it, and maybe they still won't like it. But honestly, I don't see how you can get through Water 7 and not end up a mega fan of the series. He is right that along with this show having some of the highest highs that you can find in an anime, it does have some extremely low lows. There is notoriously bad pacing in this, and I don't know if he explicitly goes over this, but he didn't watch the official anime the way that I did. I watched the actual anime episode for episode on Hulu.
I'm better than all of you.
When the Hulu episodes ran out, I went to a website to finish the rest. I think he watched One Piece, which is like a fan edited version of the entire series where they cut off all the filler. Basically, One Piece is like 1-to-1 with the manga. And I think honestly that lends to a part of why he fell in love with the series like he did. Why some arcs are higher than others in his ranking, but we'll get to that later.
In particular, Fishman Island. That is my least favorite arc in the entire series. I hated that. That was a slog to get through, and I found so little to like about Fishman Island. But my favorite arcs are as followed, in this order. My favorite arc is Marineford, followed by Innie's Lobby, followed by Dressrosa.
Now, when I was talking about One Piece just now, I actually think that the reason why Dressrosa is in his top 3 is because he watched One Piece. It's because he watched the version that cuts out all the filler. I don't even think I'm exaggerating this. I think the One Piece version of Dressrosa is probably half the length of the actual anime runtime in terms of like episodes. There are like over 100 episodes of Dressrosa, and just about all of them include some level of filler, like whether it's a flashback or something like that. And some of them, literally half the episode is a flashback to the previous episode. I looked up a manga chapter to episode conversion list once just to see when I was watching Dressrosa, and some of those episodes are literally a half of a chapter of source material per episode.
You're torturing me and everyone else watching. Wait.
That is disgustingly slow pacing. So actually, I thought it was funny that he put Dressrosa in his top 3, but it actually makes sense. If you cut out all the filler, all the flashbacks, all the, previous episode, this had all this nonsense, and all the reaction images, all that, if you cut all that down and just get to the nitty gritty, Dressrosa actually is, I would probably say, I would probably put it in my top 5. If I had to come up with a ranking off the top of my head, Water 7, probably Wano, and then Egghead, Elbaf, and then I'd probably put Dressrosa at my number 5. The villain, the characters, setting, everything about Dressrosa is just peak. I think the only reason people have a bad taste in their mouth about Dressrosa is because we were there for so long in the anime. So insanely long, like it just drags on and on and on.
And the more thought I put into it, the harder it became to choose what are my definitive favorite arcs, because there are some turbo bangers in here, but the one that's never changed as my favorite arc is Marineford. That one's pretty unbeatable. And I know Dressrosa in particular is a bit of a contentious pick to be in my top 3 arcs. Worth noting, I watched One Piece, so it cut out a lot of filler, which Dressrosa was apparently famous for. I didn't get that experience. Maybe my Dressrosa experience was very different than a normal anime watcher's experience if they watched all the filler.
And I just went over that, so that kind of puts it all in perspective right there. He likes Dressrosa because he basically got just the Dressrosa plot, minus all the reaction panels and filler and flashbacks, all this nonsense. He got to skip through all that and just get to the heart of the story that was taking place in Dressrosa. And just that story alone belongs in the top 5. I mean, I think it's fantastic, honestly.
was just the culmination of everything that had been building for so long in an extremely satisfying and emotional arc. This arc also opened my third eye to a painful revelation that I may not know what the One Piece is yet, but I do know what the one truth is, that Mihawk is a fraud.
Yes, sir! Yes, sir! Mihawk's a fucking fraud! Yes, he is! Mihawk's a fucking fraud! Yes, sir! Okay. I don't know why he thinks Mihawk is a fraud, but everybody that watches One Piece and catches up to it says the same thing. He's a fraud, bro. The world's strongest swordsman. My ass, bro. How many swordsmen are in the series, dude? How many feats have we seen from Mihawk? How many have we seen from Shanks? How many have we seen from Roger, from Odin, from all these guys? How is he the strongest? We need to see something from him. We need to see something. We saw Roger's divine departure against Odin. We saw Shanks' divine departure against Kid. We've seen swordsman feats in this series from everybody except Mihawk, the greatest swordsman. What is going on here, dude? The agenda says he's a fucking fraud, dude.
Speaking of world's greatest swordsman, for the longest time throughout this series, my favorite character was Zoro. But now that I'm finally caught up, it's still Zoro. People like to boil him down to just being like a very one-dimensional flat character, but I just think that they're not watching the same show. That's so disingenuous. I can recognize that his motivations and a lot of the side quests, we'll call them, that he goes on are simpler than the rest of the crew, but that doesn't mean that he lacks as much depth as they have. I think Zoro is a perfect character to contrast the rest of the crew, and I always appreciate where he ends up throughout the arcs.
I agree. Zoro even has more of a captain's mentality than even Luffy does, but that lends to his character because Luffy is so happy-go-lucky and carefree. He doesn't always do what a captain should do, and that's what he has Zoro for. Zoro is the logical part of Luffy's brain that Luffy doesn't naturally have. Zoro keeps Luffy in check. We actually saw this in Water 7. When the Mary broke down and they're trying to get it fixed, the shipwrights are telling them that the Mary can't be fixed, it has to be scrapped, it won't be able to sail anymore. And Luffy's trying to tell this to Usopp, and Usopp disrespects Luffy, but after their fight, when Usopp wants to just come back, everybody's crying. Zoro knows that Luffy, Sanji, Nami, Chopper, everybody wants Usopp back on the crew. Usopp's crying too. Usopp wants to come back. But Zoro knows that Luffy can't just let him back. He can't just let him come back without acknowledging what he did wrong. Disrespecting his captain. Luffy would never in a million years have done that. But Zoro pushed him to it. Zoro made him wait until Usopp apologized before he would let Luffy pull him back on the ship. That is one of the most important moments for Zoro's character for me. And that is the biggest difference between him and the rest of the crew. He embodies the first mate position better than Luffy even embodies the captain position. Zoro is the first mate of the Straw Hat crew, and that is something that gets proven time and time again throughout the series. You know, people talk shit about Zoro, but there is not a single Straw Hat. There is not a single character in the series, period, that could do Zoro's job on the crew better than he does.
My most controversial take on One Piece is that Sabo is genuinely a fanfic character that you have to suspend disbelief in order to accept his presence in this series.
That's a really, really hot take. There are people that actually would agree with him on that too. And to some extent I see why. Luffy and Ace's third brother. And Sabo was retconned to be a part of that. He grew up with them. He was Ace's friend, became friends with Luffy, blah, blah, blah. He gets reintroduced in the story as having amnesia and seeing Ace's death in the newspaper. He remembers his past and then he goes to Dressrosa to get Ace's devil fruit, and he has a pretty important role in the story going forward. He's the number 2 in the Revolutionary Army, which is, you know, their goal is to take down the world government. I can see why he says he has like a fanfic origin, and you kind of have to suspend disbelief to include him in the story, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, the amnesia plotline, and just him like being suddenly injected in the story in the first place. It's almost like Oda regretted killing Ace and needed someone to fulfill Ace's role. He can't just bring Ace back from the dead, so he does the next best thing, which is give Luffy another brother. Personally, I don't hate Sabo. I actually really like Sabo.
Like, the more and more I think about Sabo, the less and less sense it makes for him to even be here. Just this secret third brother that just happens to pop up out of nowhere, and somehow he is the well-known second in command of the Revolutionary Army, a world-famous group, and yet somehow Ace, who himself is extremely notorious and high-ranking in the Whitebeard Pirates, never knew Sabo was alive?
It's a really, really good point. How didn't they know of each other? Cause yeah, by the time Ace dies, Sabo and Ace are both at the top of their popularity. They're both like at their peak. Sabo is number 2 in the Revolutionary Army, which is literally the world is afraid of the Revolutionary Army because of world government propaganda, because obviously they're trying to rebel against them. So like everybody knows about the Revolutionary Army, everybody knows about Dragon, everybody knows about Sabo, and obviously on the other hand, everybody knows about Whitebeard and the Whitebeard Pirates, and so everybody knows about Ace. He's the division commander of one of his fleets. So it's like, how didn't they know about each other? I never really considered that before.
Was Ace illiterate? Maybe, but even if he was illiterate, why the fuck couldn't he see pictures in a newspaper? Did he never hear Sabo's name, even though apparently everyone knew about Sabo, who he was in the Revolutionary Army? And there was never anything in Ace's ear that was like, wait, Sabo, it's ringing a bell. My brother. It just doesn't compute, and especially the timing makes it even more fishy, where it feels like the sole reason behind Sabo's presence in the story is that he was drummed up, conjured as a replacement to Ace. He just happens to come through after Ace's death. He also gets Ace's devil fruit. It really feels like Sabo's entire purpose was just to be a Ace replacement.
A replacement, if you will. No, that's what I was saying. It's like Oda regretted killing off Ace, wanted Ace to come back without breaking his own story. He wanted to bring Ace back for something, and the only way he can do that is by giving Luffy a third brother. I mean, I see his problem. I hear the criticism.
And the way Sabo even is used in the story itself is very odd. He's kind of here as like this all-powerful, damn near omniscient presence who can do everything, and is used exclusively for like these fake-out moments. So like, he goes to the world government and like, the 5 elders attack him, he might be dead, but he's not dead. He's on an island, the island gets blown up, Sabo might be dead, he's not dead. It's like, it's very weird. Sabo as a character just doesn't really fit with the rest of the characters One Piece introduces, and it just feels like the way in which he is put into the story feels very forced and very out of left field.
So what he's talking about there, Sabo meeting the 5 elders and he might be dead but he's actually not. Him almost be on an island and the island gets blown up and he might be dead but he's not. What he's talking about is, I believe it's chapter 1085. Sabo encounters the 5 elders, but he's there, he's listening to the 5 elders talking to King Nefertari Cobra. He learns about the existence of a secret king named Imu, who sits on the empty throne that is meant to symbolize the 5 elders share the power. And then Sabo learns that there's actually a king sitting on the throne. And when this king attacks Cobra, Sabo jumps in to save him, and all 5 elders and Emu transform and try to attack him, and he escapes. I don't think that this is like an ass pull per se. The only thing that really gets me about this is Emu has all 3 types of haki. It's safe to assume. They definitely have observation haki. That's been proven in recent chapters. And yet, Emu didn't know Sabo was there? That's the thing that gets me about that. Now, the other thing that he was talking about, Sabo being on an island that got blown up and what if he died but he didn't actually? After the events, he goes to Lelouchia Island, soon after destroyed by a giant beam of light from the sky that Emu let off. It's thought to be like an ancient weapon of sorts. And Sabo is later revealed to have left the island with some people from Lelouchia just before it was destroyed. So, I hear the criticism, fake out after fake out. If you put Luffy in place of Sabo, I think people would hate it a lot more, because then it's like really like plot armor, like contrived writing. But considering Sabo is just a side character and doesn't really actually have that much importance to the story as a whole, I think we can write this off as just him getting lucky. I think that's a perfectly good explanation.
Now, not to be confused with me being a Sabo hater, I don't even really dislike him or anything. It just feels very odd how he gets into this story in the first place and the way in which he is used in the story. But his scenes are hype. Like, it is a cool sequence when he, like, tries to save Cobra and everything. Like, it is cool to watch, but I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense how we even got to that point with Sabo in the first place is all. Let's now dive into Egghead. So when I was first watching Egghead, I was a pretty vocal Scrooge on it. With Egghead, though, no longer does it feel like there is a hesitation to kill off characters. There is a lot of character deaths in here that I didn't expect, that I didn't see coming, that are important characters, so it really does feel like we're reaching the end game here. They are, like, actively killing characters. Like, it feels like it's getting much more intense. One of my biggest complaints so far about Egghead, though, and it's not even in the first half, it actually is in the second half, bringing all 5 elders here, I think just kind of made them seem weaker than they are. So, I like Saint Saturn as a villain. I think he's a great villain. But him actually fighting Luffy, he looks like a bitch. And I get Luffy, as, you know, the new Joy Boy, is supposed to be absolutely fucking stomping this man. But Saint Saturn as a fighter is really underwhelming. He's basically like the Derek Zoolander of the One Piece universe. He has one move. He has one look. And it's just by throwing out his little spider legs, and that's it. He doesn't do anything besides that. Even when he's not fighting Luffy, and he's like going after the rest of the Straw Hat crew, he can't even like kill them because he's only using his spider legs and nothing else. And then he's like, oh, this is a waste of my fucking time. I'm just gonna run.
I understand what he's trying to say here. Why give the elders combat forms if they're not going to be able to fight, if they're not going to be top combatants, you know? But at the same time, you got to take into consideration the fact that these guys are immortal. It's probably been hundreds of years since they've ever like fought anybody seriously. It may have even been longer. Maybe they've never had to fight anybody before. Because they're the top of the world government. Everybody's terrified of them. So it's not like people are going up to challenge him to a fight every day. He doesn't really fight. Luffy does. Luffy fights all the time. And even setting aside him, you know, being Joy Boy, of course he's going to be a better combatant. He's going to look better when they fight because he's more experienced. He's not used to having to fight. He's not used to, he doesn't have to come up with all these crazy fight techniques that Luffy does. 5 elders have the Holy Knights to send out. And I would imagine, unless it's a situation like this where there's some Void Century lore getting out or something like that, the 5 elders themselves really want to shut down, that they don't trust anybody else to shut down, they're gonna send the Holy Knights to fight for them. For 99 out of 100 situations, they're gonna send the Holy Knights. They're not gonna come themselves. So I don't think that the 5 elders themselves need to be top combatants. But even if Luffy isn't at full power, I don't think Saturn should be able to give Luffy a fight like that. Because Luffy has to beat Emu and presumably Blackbeard too. And I think it's safe to say that by the end of the series, both Blackbeard and Emu are going to be the strongest 2 villains in the entire series. So, how much stronger do y'all want Luffy to get? How much stronger do y'all think that he's going to get? Because at a certain point, Luffy has to hit his peak, and it just has to be a matter of him taking down the final villain. No more training arcs, no more like all this techniques that he has to learn. Like, eventually we're gonna reach a point where Luffy is strong enough to take down the final villains. And how far off do y'all think he is from that point? I don't think he's very far.
Like, it just makes him look like not a very terrifying presence. And when they brought the other 5 elders in there, the same phenomenon happened where, because now there's so many, they can't give a whole lot of focus to them. So instead, they all only do one thing. And that's just so underwhelming for these 5 elders, whom we have this entire time been led to believe probably the most fearsome, terrifying creatures on the fucking face of that planet. And yet here all 5 of them are just getting toyed with, really, getting laughed at, getting blasted around. They can't even stop a broadcast. Like, they can't even find the transponder snail and destroy enough things to stop it. Granted, they have to be a little careful with the mother flame, I get that. But they just don't look as strong as we've been led to believe. Like, so far, there hasn't been a moment where I'm actually concerned about a character because of the 5 elders' presence, because they're just not good at doing anything they aim to do here.
You know, I think the pushback I would offer to this point is, of course, they're getting humiliated. They're fighting a god. They're fighting a god who they've tried to stop from reemerging for 800 plus years. Like, this right here, Luffy in Gear 5, that's what they've been afraid of. That's their biggest fear. That's what they've been trying to stop. And so it makes perfect sense to me to have Luffy be just embarrassing them. Because otherwise, what the hell are they scared of? If they can put up a fair fight against Luffy in Gear 5, why the hell would Emu be scared of Joy Boy? Why would they be so scared of the Nika fruit? You know? I think it makes perfect sense for Luffy to be just absolutely embarrassing them and laughing in their faces. If Kizaru didn't feed Luffy and put him back up to full strength, then you would have felt that fear. It's only because the sun god Nika was there fighting them that you didn't feel concerned.
I think it would have just been far stronger if it was only Saint Saturn who was up against everyone, the Giants, Luffy, the Straw Hat crew, all while trying to stop Vegapunk's desperate broadcast to the rest of the world to get the truth out there. And Saint Saturn against all these odds is still making it a close fight. That, I think, would have been a really strong showcase for the 5 elders and how scary they can be, that one of them is able to go against all the strongest in the universe there.
I agree. It would be a perfect showcasing for them, but it would also draw, like I just said, it would also throw into question why the hell are they so scared of the Nika fruit? If 1 out of 5 can handle the Nika fruit plus all of his allies, I think that would cause a lot more problems than it would solve. I understand his criticism, and I think to some degree, the 5 elders together showing up, they should have had a much stronger showing than they did have. But I just think the idea that Saturn should have been able to do more by himself, I think all 5 elders together should have been able to put up more of a fight against Luffy and all the allies and trying to shut down Vegapunk's message. They should have had more success there all combined together. But Saturn by himself? I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
That's just like my main complaint so far with Egghead. It kind of took a lot of the oomph out of the 5 elders. Anyway, though, that's really like my only major complaint with the second half of Egghead. Like I said, didn't love the first half, but maybe it just wasn't my cup of tea. There's really nothing in there in particular I think was bad. But overall, I think it's a very strong arc, and I'm really, really happy that I caught up to One Piece and I get to enjoy this in real time now. I will say, though, I don't expect anyone to follow suit and, like, force themselves to watch 300 episodes if they're not enjoying it. I think it's totally fine if you just don't like One Piece after X amount of episodes to just say it's not for you and be done with it.
As to what he said about, you know, don't force yourself to watch 300 episodes if you're not enjoying it, I back that. But I do think that a lot of people give up on One Piece and say it's not for them before they actually get into the substance of the series. I think Penguin Zero is one of those people, and except he is one of the few that pushed past that point and got into the reasons why everybody says that it's so great. Why everybody says, hey, watch past this point, you know, get through to this, watch enough of it to get here, and then you'll understand why everybody says it's the greatest manga, why everybody says it's peak fiction. I think that he did that, and I think that I agree with him. A lot of people aren't probably going to do that, but considering his influence and the fact that this was posted 2 days ago and has 1.2 million views, and just the influence that he has on his audience, I'm willing to bet that a lot of people start looking into One Piece and start watching it. And maybe a lot of those people that previously watched One Piece that said it wasn't for them are going to look at it in a new light now and be like, okay, well, maybe I just need to get to episode 300 and then I'll love it too. And, you know, if that's the case, I'm all for it. I hope that that's what happens. Because One Piece truly is peak fiction. If you enjoyed this video, if you're interested in more stuff like that, go ahead and subscribe, leave a like on this video, leave your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching and take it easy.